So our next presenter is going to be Ted Weeden, who's going to be talking to us about growing pawpaws in clay soils. So you can use this one, or there's a mic under there. That's forward, that's back, and that's kind of like a little pointer.
Oh, that's the pointer. A little information about my background. And this is how I got hooked on it. And maybe Dr. Pomper can remember this picture being taken. This is 2004, by the way. So I joined the Backyard Fruit Growers in 1999 at a grafting workshop. And the following year, in September, they had two tours, one at home and one in what they call a home tour around Lancaster. So we went to individual homes. They had one or two trees. And then on Sunday, we went to Holtwood, which is a park along the Susquehanna River. In every ravine, there were pawpaw trees growing. So I used to search these ravines and look for pawpaws. But in the park, there was a trail that we went, half-mile long, 200 feet wide, both sides, and you walk up to the tree, and they were 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch diameters, but they were 50 feet up in the air. And the only way you're going to get pawpaws is to shake them, and that's what we did. Well, other times you needed a hard hat because they come down pretty hard. 2001, I planted my first 5 pawpaw trees. Fortunately, of those 5, I bought overleaves. The rest of them, Mitchell, Wilson, I've cut down and removed. They were too seedy. They didn't meet what I was expecting for a pawpaw. For the back fruit growers, everybody had a lot of questions. And we didn't really have an expert within the group. My background is I'm an electrical engineer. And I'm one of those guys that took more engineering courses than I should have. So I had to find out answers to these problems. So I attended the Pawpaw Festival, 2003, 2004, went to the international conference, the second conference, and the fourth conference. The purpose was to learn as much information as I could. Over the years, each year I planted more and more pawpaw trees. Instead of a hobby, it became more like work. Now I'm retired, I'm working more than I did when I was working. 2006, 2008, I hand pollinated because I was told that they're fussy about pollination and you gotta have all these little insects to pollinate. So for the first 3 years, I pollinated. 2006, overleaf and sunflower actually bloomed for me. I hand pollinated those 2 trees and got fruit. 2008, when I went to harvest, I had pawpaws that was 15 feet up in the air, which I know I didn't pollinate, and so I haven't pollinated since then. Fortunately for me, I'm in an area where there's woods. On 2 sides of me, there are woods. So there's pollinators that are around. By 2010, I had so many pawpaws, I didn't know what to do with them. So for the back home grower, I gave a tour at home, set up many tables, all these varieties, and it was good. And then 2014, I presented my first class. My first class, as I teach, it's over 2 hours long. So have me up here for 15 minutes is going to be hard to do. So this is some of the experience I have when I'm getting ready for the tour. The pawpaws are labeled, so I know which hole the tree comes from. I developed a scatter chart, so I know which tree I planted in what location. After you get so many trees, right now I've got 80 trees that I take care of, and I've got over 30 cultivars. This will give you some idea for a homeowner. When I first moved in, the last thing you look at is, I'm a tree hugger. I like to plant trees. But when I got there, they had planted a whole bunch of silver maples, Norway maples, and I removed most of them. I regret that. I should have removed all of them. So I own a little over 2 acres. And after digging up the trees I didn't want, I realized I had clay soil over the whole area. Later I found out that in the 30s and 40s, it was a cornfield, rotating crops. And soil analysis, when I first got there, fiber content was good, but low in calcium. So to compensate for that is I spread eggshells around all my pawpaw trees. In any garden that I have, I've always used eggshells to fertilize the garden and get the minerals. This gives you some idea of what the backyard looks like. I have, in the wintertime, 14 deer that wander around. Before I came here, I had 12 deer. So I'm a little afraid of how many deer I'm going to see this year. In the wintertime, every winter is unpredictable. So where the ice is floating is a 4-foot bed. It's a pond, and it's on the bottom of where the water flows. So this wet area, I tried growing pear trees, and after a few years, the root system would rot on these trees. They would just starve. So the only thing that I can actually grow here successfully are pawpaw trees. And I get flooding every spring with the clay soil. A friend of mine in the group had a small pawpaw patch, and his wasn't doing very well, and he asked me to come over. He planted his in the woods, and it was actually swamp area. In the summertime, it would still have standing water. Even though I have water, this would be winter runoff. I have 20 acres that melt and flow through here. If we have a tropical storm, I'm half hour north of Philadelphia. My elevation is only 300 feet above sea level. So when we get a tropical storm, we can get a lot of water. Now, if you notice in the back, there's a metal pipe across there. We've had hurricanes that have come through, and I've had 8 inches of water above those pipes flowing. This picture's taken off my back porch, and it's kind of scary seeing that much water coming towards the house, but it turns and flows away from the house after it gets past the pine trees. So I have a number of pictures here of showing in the wintertime. Now the trees are bigger now, so I've removed the fences. The deer don't like to get too close because they're protecting their eyes. Some more pictures of flooding, and I've got various dates. Now the earlier picture showed the back with no snow. Snowfall in our area, we could have a winter with no snow, or we can have a couple of feet of snow. May set a record it was the 3rd wettest rainfall this past May. And this is taken on the 16th, but the whole month of May, completely wet. This is Green River Bell. It's my tallest tree, and it's next to the pond, so it's the prime location. This is one of the earlier ones that I had planted. It's over 20 feet tall now. This is about 23 years old. Now, the first 35 trees I planted, Because I had clay soil, I wanted good soil. My old garden, every year, I would collect leaves in the fall, rototill it in the garden. And then in the spring, I would do it again. I put in 1,600 pounds of yellow sand. Yellow sand in the area has no salt in it. White sand would have salt, so I made sure I got the right sand that didn't have any salt in it. And then I would get triple ground mulch, and I rototill it all in. And that's what I used for my garden for years. When I planted these trees, because of the large taproot, I dug a 3-foot hole. That was my target. And in most locations, I did the 3 feet. You fill a hole halfway up. I took the soil from my garden, so it's well aged. Fill the hole halfway, and then I just dump in and do a dance. Pack it solid. And then raise it up a little more, and then plant my tree. So the first 35 trees I did correctly, and I didn't have any problems. Here's an example of some of the deer. The pond is dry. They're looking for water. They check every time we get a little bit of rain. They always check because they go back and forth. There's a creek on one side, cornfield on another, so they're continually going back and forth. Unfortunately, the deer have gotten familiar with me, and the 3rd generation now of me being friendly with them, I got 4-point buck that gets within 5 feet of me. And I just look at him and I go, you're close enough. When I look at the antlers and I go, So that's why when the trees are young, I always put fence around. When the trees get bigger, I use them on the newer trees because I'm always planting pawpaw trees. The biggest problem with clay soil is in the summertime, we could have droughts. This year we had 17 days with no rain, and then we got over 2 inches of rain in a 4-day period, 2 separate rainstorms. And this is what happens, is the tree realizes, oh, I got water. It sucks us up as much as it wants. The taproot is full, the trunk is full, the leaves are happy. Now it's pumping all that water into the fruit, and the fruit can't grow fast enough. So fruit cracking is our biggest problem, and as a breeder, this is what I'm trying to eliminate, because the backyard growers, most homeowners do not have irrigations. They do not have a pond. Fortunately, that pond, when it's full of water, will irrigate and keep that clay soil moist for about 5 weeks before that starts to dry out. The other thing I've discovered is versus out here in Ohio versus where I am, I'm close enough, 1.5 to 2 hours from the ocean, I get a lot of heavy dew. Pawpaw trees, to me, is the smartest tree that's out there. Of all the trees that I've studied, this is the smartest tree. It learns to adapt. And when you get heavy dew, they will absorb moisture and put it in the ground. So within the canopy, under the canopy of a pawpaw tree, that soil will stay moist. But as soon as you leave that area, I've had cracks that are 12 inches deep because the clay shrinks when it's dry. And it's like cement. Tree roots only grow in that type of soil March, April, and May. So when it starts to dry out in June, roots stop growing because it's like a jackhammer trying to go through it. Pawpaws experience this situation. But as long as they're getting moisture from underneath, enough to keep the leaves happy, then I don't worry about it. I don't. I've had some trees that will wilt, and that's one of the questions I get is my tree is wilting. I go in the late afternoon, I ask them, says, go out the next morning and tell me if it's wilting. If it's not wilting in the morning, then it's getting enough moisture out of the ground for the tree. Here on the East Coast, we get enough dew, we really don't see that problem. The other thing I do for the clay soil is in the back of the property, I planted pine trees. I had some big pine trees, which I've slowly had to remove. They got too big, too close to the house, I had to remove them. Well, in the fall, I would rake those pine needles a 6-inch layer of pine needles decays from the bottom, works its way up, and it'll decay about 2 inches each year. So as long as I put that mulch around it, it keeps it warmer in the wintertime. I like pine needles because the mice do not like to build nests in the needles. They like a dry roof, like any of us, we like a dry house. But if you use leaves, they will make a tent out of that, and you'll be attracting them. Even though they don't like pawpaws, but I've got pear trees, apple trees. The voles win on the apple trees. They leave everything else alone. When I had 35 trees, I had enough pine mulch, I could mulch around each of these trees. When I did that hole, I made sure that I had 6 to 8 inches above the ground level. So if there's any water, it runs off away from the crown of the tree. And when you mulch it, it also keeps it away from that. So in '23, I went to the Ohio Pawpaw Festival again, and I gave a presentation on a Saturday morning. I've got my kids involved. So it's 20 years later. Instead of me learning, I'm now teaching. Here it is in October, and I hear scratching at the front door. A little baby raccoon scratching on the door. I was able to take a picture of that. I think it's kind of funny. Got any more pawpaws? Because raccoons love pawpaws. I have no idea where he came from because I trap the raccoons and take them to a different location. Originally, I did that. Now I give them swimming lessons. And once in a while, I'll get a bald eagle. This was taken a few years ago, but this year, after I got done trimming around some of the trees, I went back out to take a look at how well I'd done, what I needed to do more, and there was another baby bald eagle. So they fly over my area this time of year. And that's it. If you have any... Later on, if we don't have time for questions, we'll have time now, but you can always email me for questions, and I'll get back to you in 2-3 days.
Yeah, I wondered if irrigation with like consistent moisture would help you with the cracking issue in the fruit.
What I tell the homeowners is if you're living near a stream or a pond, you can go out and buy any known cultivar that you want. It's not an issue. But there's another, if you go on the internet and you're reviewing different hybrids that are out there, unknown or new cultivars, cracking is an issue, and it's something that you have to be careful of. I don't have irrigation. There's a lot of them I don't recommend because of the cracking issues. Because our weather is too unpredictable, droughts, rain, more droughts, and with global warming, it's going to get worse.